Devil May Cry remakes. A topic that has come up quite often within the past year, thanks to the series reaching the major milestone of its 20th year anniversary. 20 years or 2 whole decades is a pretty large amount of time, especially when it comes to video games. And so, the cogs were set in motion in the community and many began to ponder, if Capcom were going to remake a Devil May Cry, which Devil May Cry would it be? It's a question even I myself began to ponder, as many in the community put forth decent arguments as to which game really should receive the remake treatment. And of course, in this video, we're going to take a quick look at 2 standout examples, because let's be honest, there really only are 2 contenders if Capcom decides to go down the remake path. Working our way backwards, DMC5 and DMC4 are obviously not in the running at all for a remake because they are just far too modern. That brings us to DMC3 though, and I think most of the community will agree with me on this, in that DMC3 doesn't need a remake. Much like Resident Evil 4, it is a timeless classic, one that you'll always be able to jump into and have a blast. And of course, we've also got the spin-off Pinnacle of Combat project that Capcom is also supervising and working with Nebula Joy to create, and so DMC3 I guess is covered on that basis. And that of course only leaves us with Devil May Cry 2, the black sheep of the DMC series, and the original Devil May Cry that started it all, the genesis for stylish hard action, for the modern character action game, spectacle fighter, whatever you want to call it. Skipping over DMC2 for just a second and going back to the origin point of the series, the original Devil May Cry turned 20 years old this year. From a chronological perspective, it makes sense to start with the original Devil May Cry when it comes to remakes. Looking at other series out there that have got the remake treatment, they always usually begin with the first in the series. That's just how things go. Not only that, but the original Devil May Cry is touted as the grandfather to the modern 3D action game. A game that sold considerably well, not only domestically but abroad worldwide, and so I think many people would cherish the idea of a remake for the original Devil May Cry. And with the original Devil May Cry being my favorite, I'm somewhat inclined to agree. Only somewhat, because I do have my reservations about the original DMC getting the remake treatment. The original Devil May Cry wears its Resident Evil roots proudly on its sleeve. And sure, the game was promoted with the stylish hard action tagline, but by and large it is nothing like the modern day Devil May Cry. Much like the original Resident Evil trilogy, it features fixed camera angles and focuses largely on exploration. The atmosphere itself is unparalleled throughout the entire series. Malay Island is a character in and of itself, similar to how the village was touted as its own character in Resident Evil 8, or RE Village, whatever you prefer to call it. And while part of me does want to see the original Devil May Cry modernized and brought up to the standards of the rest of the series, I fear that by modernizing it and focusing solely on combat, they're going to lose a lot of the charm that the original Devil May Cry had. But then, playing devil's advocate, at the same time, a lot of people would suggest that what point is there of a remake if all you're going to do is keep the game as a one-to-one recreation with just better graphical fidelity? People will simply tell you, if you want the original experience, go and play the original game, leave the remake to push things in a new direction. And thus enters Devil May Cry 2. As mentioned, the black sheep of the DMC series, especially in the community, didn't sell all too bad, but was critically panned, shall we say. It released in 2003. At this point it's 18 years old and just 2 years shy of the original. So why exactly are people in the community advocating for DMC2 to receive the remake treatment over DMC1? Well, simply put, it's because DMC2, especially in the mind of the community, is just that bad that whatever Capcom could do with a possible remake, it would never be worse than the original. Now, talking all this smack about DMC2 feels a little weird, especially when knowing the development history behind this game. For those of you that don't know, The team that worked on the classic hit Devil May Cry did not work on the sequel. In fact, creative director Hideki Kamiya didn't even know that DMC2 was in development. He hadn't been tapped to work on the sequel, which is quite strange. And so, of course, with a new team, the game went through development hell. Nothing from the original that people liked really made it into DMC2, which doesn't necessarily make sense from a consumer perspective, but looking at some of the interviews, it seems as though the DMC2 team really wanted to make its mark on Devil May Cry and make DMC2 their own project. And with a deadline to release fast approaching, and with only 6 months until the game was actually on shelves, Itsuno was thrust into the helm of the project to attempt to salvage whatever they could, and thus we have DMC2. Compared to a lot of other action games or games in general, DMC2 isn't all too bad. Compared to the rest of the DMC series, and especially the original, it is pretty mediocre, and that's putting it lightly. And so with the idea of a remake, with DMC2 being rebuilt from the ground up with a clear vision in mind and a team determined to wipe away the stain that is the original, it's no wonder that people in the community are advocating for such a project. I also think from a PR and consumer perspective, a DMC2 remake would do better than a remake of the original, because the original is considered a timeless. There is a lot of things that you can screw up, and no doubt whatever it is that you do, people aren't going to be happy. For example, take a look at the Resident Evil 2 remake that was made, or even the Resident Evil 3 remake. Though by and large the games reviewed well, sold well, and a lot of people liked them, there is a large part of the RE community that thinks those games could have been done a whole lot better. And so what I'm trying to say here is that a DMC2 remake is a blank slate. Capcom could essentially do no wrong if they decide to go ahead with the project. Unless, I don't know, they vary up the genre wildly and turn it into a visual novel or something, but even then, you probably won't have to fight the infested chopper as a boss fight, so in my books that's 100% better than the original. But despite having talked at length about DMC remakes, I don't think they'll be coming anytime soon, at least that is if articles and interviews and potential rumors are to be believed. But let me know down in the comments below, which DMC game do you think deserves the remake treatment? DMC 1 or DMC 2? Or heck, throw in a wild card and say DMC 3. Of course, if you enjoyed today's video, do be sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to stay up to date with anything and everything Devil May Cry. With all that said and done, it has been me, DevilNeverCry. I'd like to thank all of you for watching, and as always, I'll see you all next video.